Hello children, today we will start with the lesson India's foreign policy. Now before we look at India's foreign policy, let us try to understand what is the meaning and importance of foreign policy. Now there are many countries in the world. None of these countries are self-sufficient or self-reliant. They depend on other countries for some need or the other. Now each country has to decide the nations with which it should be friendly and with which countries it should maintain international relations. Such decisions should be made thoughtfully. The theoretical framework in which such decisions are taken is called foreign policy. Every sovereign and independent country decides its own foreign policy. What is national interest? Now, national interest means through which the independence and sovereignty of a country can be safeguarded. National interest also includes efforts to achieve economic development and to take steps towards increasing the national power. When decisions are taken after giving a careful thought to what is beneficial and good for our respective country, we say that we are nurturing a national interest. Now, there are two very important factors included in national interest. First is defense, that is protection of the country. Second is economic development. Only if a country is economically developed, it can maintain its own or independent international relations with other countries, and it will not have to bow down to any international pressure. Now, what is national interest and what is foreign policy? How is it related? National interest and foreign policy are closely connected to each other. Foreign policy is drawn up to encourage the national interest of defense and economic development. National interest is the goal and foreign policy is the means to achieve this goal. Now, goals of a nation keep changing from time to time. Accordingly, the national interest also changes. Now, children, when we study a country, it is necessary to understand its constitution and its foreign policy, because the constitution and foreign policy impacts the other aspects or other spheres of life. Now, what are the factors influencing foreign policy? First is geographical location. The location of the country, where this country is situated. Some countries are far away from other countries, while there are several neighboring countries around some countries. All this impacts foreign policy. Whether the country is landlocked, whether the surrounding countries are friendly countries or they are competitors or they are enemy countries, all this impacts the foreign policy. The geographical elements, meaning the coastline, the weather conditions, the size of population, the mineral wealth, all this impacts the foreign policy. The second factor influencing foreign policy is political system. Nations' parliament plays a major role. How? When different aspects come up for discussion in parliament, both the party that is governing and the opposition party try to regulate foreign policy by raising questions about the same. In a federal political system, when we say federal political system, we are talking about division of powers between the center and state. In such a condition, the interest of the states also have to be taken into account when foreign policy is created. For example, events in Sri Lanka may affect Tamil Nadu, and events in Bangladesh may affect West Bengal. The next factor is economy. Now, foreign policy is shaped by the need to establish economic relations. We are talking about import and export relations. We are talking about participation in world trade. Things that help in strengthening the economy of the country. All these impact foreign policy. Economic security and dependency on other countries. Now, a country is recognized to be powerful in proportion to the economic security it enjoys. Countries which have strong economy are less dependent on others and they can decide for themselves what kind of international relations they need to maintain. The next factor is national leadership. National leaders maintain foreign policy. Now, who are these national leaders? We are talking about the president, the prime minister, the different ministers like the defense minister, foreign minister, finance minister, all these are national leaders. Now, these people, they maintain foreign policy and they try to improve upon it. Now, some examples are that Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he tried to improve China and India relations. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of the country, he contributed in creating the policy of non-alignment. It is an important policy that is still followed. The next factor influencing foreign policy is administrative factors. Now, the final decision about foreign policy are taken by the Prime Minister and the Minister of External Affairs, or we can say the government is taking the final decision. But in order to come at this final decision, the Prime Minister and his ministers, they need some kind of information, they need data, they need analysis to arrive at this decision. Who provides all this? It is the administrative machinery. The administrative machinery, they provide the information required to create foreign policy. Let's talk about India's foreign policy. India started shaping its foreign policy from 1947 onwards. Why 1947? Because that was the year we got our independence. So after independence, India started creating its own foreign policy. Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 51 of the Indian Constitution, have laid guidelines on how to shape foreign policy. And according to this, India should give priority to safeguard international peace and security and resolve international problems and disputes by peaceful means. So Article 51 of the Indian Constitution says that we need to promote international peace and security, maintain just and honorable relations between nations, foster respect for international law and treaty obligations in the dealings of organized people with one another, encourage settlement of international disputes by arbitration. Arbitration means any disputes that arises should be settled by talking, by dialogue, and not by violent means. Objective of India's foreign policy. Now, India's foreign policy has been developed in the following framework. First, maintain friendly relations with other nations. Second, respect international law. Keeping this framework in mind, the objective of India's foreign policy has been developed. The first is maintaining friendly relations with other countries without compromising on defense, security, and protecting geographical boundaries of India. So just to maintain friendly relation with another country, we should not compromise on the defense of the country, on the security of the country, and definitely not allow any other country to intrude or capture areas of the country. geographical boundaries. So any other country should not enter inside the boundary of the country. The second one is protect the unity and integrity of the country. Third, protect the interest of India's citizens living in other countries. Now, this is the responsibility of Indian embassies. So, other countries have something called Indian embassies. Now, Indian citizens who are living abroad can approach these Indian embassies in the other country, and whatever problems they have, they can get it resolved. Establish economic and commercial relations with other countries for economic development of India.